Hi everyone, we will give everyone a minute or so to come in and then we will get started. For anyone just joining, we're just giving everyone a minute to come in because they're coming in thick and fast here. And then we'll get cracking on. How are you, Paul?
I'm really good, actually. Thanks. How are you, Laura? You all right?
Yep. Good. Busy before AACR.
I can quite imagine. It's busy show season.
So for those of you that are still joining, this is our webinar today on how to get more bang for your buck. So Paul has kindly put together lovely practical advice for us that he will run through and take us through so that we can get more out of our marketing budgets, just given the current climate and what a lot of people are reporting to us, that their marketing budgets are getting squeezed a little bit. It's not what we've been used to in the past, but there is a little bit of it going around. So Paul run through that. For any of you that don't know about SAMPS, I'm sure you may or may not know about us. So we are an organization for sales and marketing professionals to basically help everyone in their careers, introduce you to the right people, give you the right tools. We do webinars, but we also do in-person events, which we haven't been able to do for obviously a few years. So it's very exciting that we have two coming up now this year. We've got one in Glasgow in June. I think Paul has a bit more information on his slides on that. So we can talk about that in a second, but it's about AI, ChatGPT, Midjourney, whatever tools are available by the time June rolls around, who knows. And we've also got an American meetup in Boston as well at the beginning of December. So anyone that is on our mailing list will get that information. So you'll see that then. So Paul, do you want to crack on then, and we will find out more about what we can do with our marketing budgets?
Yeah, good stuff. Thank you, Laura. So first and foremost, thanks ever so much to you and the SAMPS team for having me here today. I really appreciate the opportunity to speak on this topic, something that's hopefully pretty close to all of our hearts at the moment, getting squeezed on the budget front, but still expected to generate exceptional results. So how do we go about doing that? I'm going to talk about that a bit more today. For everybody on the webinar, Laura's on the questions, so please do keep them coming in as appropriate. Laura's going to pause me if it's a good time to get into the discussion then, and if not, we'll pick those questions up at the end. I would say we've probably got about 35 minutes of content here, so plenty of time for questions at the end if we have them. So yeah, please don't be shy with those. Right, let's get into it. So first and foremost, who am I? I am Paul Avery. I am one of the co-founders of BioStrata. We are a specialist life science marketing agency based in the UK, but with team members in North America as well, that helps life science companies get better results from their marketing. We've been doing this for many years. And hopefully that's armed me with a few nuggets and insights to be able to share with you today. So let's talk about the problem. I always show this slide at the beginning of presentations like this, but I think it's even more relevant given the economic challenges that we're facing, and obviously the topic of this webinar. And I always used to talk about how the expectations of senior management is that we would be able to produce marketing like this, like if we were building a house, we'd build this mansion, and then they'd give us a budget that would actually be more appropriate for building this. I think in the current economic downturn, it's even more challenging in that now the budget is probably more akin to this, and yet the expectations of what we can produce for that budget is still the shiny, shiny mansion on the left-hand side there. And hopefully, even given this context in which we find ourselves, the following 10 strategies can help. So what will we cover today? The first thing is we're going to look at how you can identify and lean into those low-risk channels that have generated great results for you in the past. We're going to look at how you can ensure that your messaging is on point so that those promotions and marketing campaigns you are running are the most likely they can be to resonate with your target customers. We're going to look at how we can leverage our existing assets to their absolute full, because I suspect many of us have them and we can do more with them. We're going to look at how tactics like account-based marketing can be especially powerful at the current time by having us focus as much of our efforts as possible on those prospects that are likely to be the highest value to our businesses. We're going to look at some practical aspects like how we can use technology to automate repetitive tasks and free us up to both do the more interesting things in our roles, but also get more done. We're going to look at some other tactics like retargeting, which is sort of a go-to for how to maximize the performance of your full marketing campaign remit and protocols, honestly, by leveraging retargeting. We'll talk about that in a bit more. We're going to talk about the importance of current customers. That also falls under the remit of marketing in many organizations, and how much harder and more costly it is to generate a new customer than to keep an existing one. So what can we do to make sure we're reducing churn and keeping our existing customers? We're also going to look at co-marketing partnerships and the value of those. We're going to look at how most life science companies these days have loads of great life science content. They could probably get more from it without having to create new content. And then finally, we're going to look at how you can differentiate your content in a world of generative AI tools. So I did manage to sneak a little bit of AI in there at the end, or I promise it won't be too
Can't help
AI
yourself.
heavy. I just can't. You know me. I'm an AI nerd. Right. Let's get into this first one. Let's have a look at about identifying your specific low risk channels, and how exciting. First tip, first slide, we've already got a 4-box model. What a wonderful time it is to be alive. So the first tip is about really working on identifying those tactics and channels that you know for sure work really well for your business, and then investing in them and scaling them appropriately. What this means is digging deeper to gather the necessary data and metrics about what works best for you, but it might also involve getting your team together for some brainstorming and some guesstimating, because in some aspects you may not have the data that you need, the concrete data to make these to complete these analyses. And so what I recommend is that you rank those tactics that you're currently using against this 4-box model of impact on results, low to high, and investment required to deliver that tactic. And that investment might be the time you have to put in, the resources you have to put in, the cash you have to invest, etc. And using this as a framework to say, right, we don't have the budget to do everything that we normally do, or to even experiment with new things that we want to do. So how can we laser focus our budget? So as you might imagine, once you've got all of your ideas on your post-it notes and they're on the virtual or real wall against this 4-box plot, you're going to focus most of your efforts on those tactics that you've identified that are going to be high impact, low investment. Then you're going to look at your future bets as being those that you want to invest some time in if you've got a little bit of bandwidth extra, to say these are going to be low investment but high return on, these are going to be high effort, but they're going to be high return on investment as well. And then for the other 2 quadrants, you're probably not going to spend too much time on them at this point. Moving on to tip number 2 is about fine-tuning your messaging for maximum impact. So one of the things that we see a lot, and I think is very easy to do, is what we call message erosion. So there was some sort of branding process, message development process that went on maybe months or even years ago, where we did the customer research, we understood what the pain points were that we needed to speak to with our customers, and we based our messages on those. But when the world moves on, especially when we have things like global pandemics, the needs, desires, frustrations, pain points, goals of customers change. So this can be a really great time to double down on going back to your messaging strategy and really thinking about how can we make sure the messages that we take to market are actually going to resonate with our prospects. So what I would suggest is starting with speaking to customers, really getting that voice of customer, and so that you can really understand straight from them what they're facing, what they're looking to achieve, but also speaking with your sales teams, because they're on the edges of your organization, hopefully speaking to prospects and customers every day, and maybe even speaking to customer service, which of course in the life sciences can be everything from application specialists and research program directors to more traditional customer service type roles. Consolidate that information into whatever your mechanism of choice is. We use personas, but anything that allows you to document and better understand your customers and your different customer segments. And then finally, cascade that into whatever your preferred brand messaging model is. In many cases, this is going to be updates, not, it's evolution, not revolution on these things. invest as much time as you think is appropriate, but you might be surprised, especially what you find from that customer research. Another thing that you can consider is going back to even competitor analysis and looking at how competitors are positioning themselves, what key messages that they are using, so that you can be sure that the messages that you're going to market with are differentiated, hopefully interesting and exciting to your prospects. Key tip number 3 is to make good use of your existing assets. So this can cover lots of different aspects of your marketing, but one thing that we see for almost all life science companies is they have 2 key assets they could probably get more from: their existing website and their existing contact database. So let's talk about websites first. So start with your homepage, right? This is the first place that most people who Google you are going to land on, and this is your chance to get their attention and their interest. So this is the homepage of a well-known international instrument manufacturer. I just typed in life science instrument company into Google, and this is the first link that I clicked, and I've tried to blur out as much information as possible so that you can't figure out who it is. But I think the key questions that we need to ask ourselves, and we can all improve our websites. I was doing this analysis for this website, and then I looked at the BioStrata website, and I was like, oh, crumbs, I need to change that. Because this is a never done thing, right? We can always improve our websites. But key questions to think of when you look at this example and when you look at your own site is it easy to scan read? Are the key messages clear? Is it obvious who this is for? Is it obvious what problem we solve? Are our key messages easy to remember? All of those things can really help make your homepage much, much more effective. So one thing I would definitely recommend is go back to your homepage and have a look at it and see if you can say very clearly, yep, above the fold, as soon as you land on our website, it's absolutely clear who we're targeting, the problem that we solve, and why we're uniquely positioned to help solve that problem. One of the bits of feedback I sometimes get is in the life sciences, we have a lot of suppliers and vendors that sell lots of different reagents and lots of different instruments, have very complex offerings, and that can obviously make this part a bit challenging. But to those companies, I usually suggest make sure your overarching value proposition is clear, and then have clear and easy menus that allow people to navigate to those products or application areas of interest, and then follow the previous advice of making it clear who you're for, what applications you serve, what problems you solve, and why you're uniquely the best to do so. From here, I would then recommend looking at your product pages and your landing pages and looking at if there are any tweaks that you can make to help optimize them for conversion, right? Most of us will probably be getting a fair bit of traffic, certainly to our homepage and to our product pages and landing pages, but are we getting as many leads from those as we could be? I'm always reminded of a project that we worked on with one client where their conversion, the brief was to generate more leads, but the conversion rate of the landing pages that they currently had in place was 0.5%. Some of that was because of some technical limitations imposed upon the internal marketing team. So we said, look, we're not going to run a lead gen program until we fix this. So let's together figure out how we're going to do it. So we made some structural changes, we made some content changes, and the conversion rate went up to nearly 20%, which is like a 20, 30, 40-fold increase, right? That was a day's work in the end. So you can really drive significant improvements by just looking at things like conversion rates on your landing pages and making those improvements. For companies that have huge websites or lots of campaign landing pages, I recommend starting with those high traffic landing pages first, especially high traffic, low conversion rate, and optimizing from there, because then you know that you're getting the most bang for buck. Conversion rate optimization, on the one hand, it's full of very simple best practice principles, but it can get quite complicated, involving lots of different A/B testing. For those that are interested, there is a fantastic book on this topic called Making Websites Win that I absolutely love, and we consider one of our conversion rate optimization Bibles here at BioStrata. So if you love a book, get a hold of that one and give it a read. It's quite a quick read, but loads of great information in there. Or alternatively, hire an expert. It's probably faster, easier, and cheaper in the long run, because your time, of course, costs money as well.
That's the Spotify story as well, that all they did was change the messaging on the button from download to start listening, and it went up, massively just from that one tiny change.
It's unbelievable, the tweaks, and that's perfect for an A/B test. It's a great example, Laura, because who would have guessed right? So they ran the A/B test, they saw those significant results. I've heard of, but not seen myself, examples where you change a button's color and its position on the page and it makes a big difference. But even fundamental best practices, social proof, right? Having a customer testimonial or a link to a case study or just something that says, hey, we think we're awesome, but it's not just us that say it, can really massively increase conversion rate on a website in general and even on a given landing page. So there are a number of different things that you can do. I'm happy to speak more about that later, or separately with anyone that's interested can reach out to me or read that book because it's one of the better resources. Right, let's turn our attention to contact databases. So there used to be an old SEO joke. Where's the best place to hide a dead body? And the answer was page 2 of Google search results because no one ever goes there. But I think these days, I would argue that the joke centers more around a company's contact database because there's so many leads that we generate that seem to disappear into our CRMs, never to be seen or thought of again. And I think this is especially true given the digital lead gen fever that was caused by the pandemic, not the fever caused by COVID-19, but the fever for senior leaders saying, give me more leads, give me more leads. And of course, what we learn over time is that that doesn't necessarily work because you need to have a plan for how you're going to work and nurture those leads that are not absolutely burning hot and sales ready, and what can you do in order to do that. So huge amounts of companies that I speak with, I think they can probably better leverage their existing contact database in terms of prospects and existing customers to better engage with those people over time. Now, there are complex lead nurturing workflows and other things and lead scoring algorithms that you can set up, but really simple way to get started is just to make sure you're contacting and connecting with those people on a frequent basis. The more segmented you can be, the better, but at the very least, get a newsletter going. Get it going out once a month. Focus on delivering high value information to your audience, not selling, right? The goal is to be helpful, build trust, and stay top of mind. You got to be consistent. Don't miss a newsletter, very easily done. And if you're worried that things like having interesting content to share is going to be a bottleneck, just re-promote your old content. We'll talk about this in a bit more detail later, but I promise you, your audience probably didn't see it the first time or the second time or the fifth time. And if they did, they've already forgotten it, especially if it's old enough. For those of you that already have this in place, you can look at more sophisticated lead nurturing techniques based on segmenting your audience based on their interests, the pain points, the applications they want to learn about, perhaps even the stage they are in the buying journey, you know, if they're a recently lapsed lead. But before doing any of that, something simple like a newsletter can really make a very big difference.
And is one per month the cadence, or is that difficult to say depending on, you know, who you're targeting?
Yeah, it's going to depend on your audience. I always tend to lean into once a month because it's frequent enough to stay top of mind, but not so frequent as to be annoying. I think it depends on how frequently you typically contact your prospects and your customers anyway. I think it also depends a bit on the bandwidth that you have available. So we have a productized service that we have called the Life Science Newswire, which is like Business Wire press release distribution service for life science companies. And we send our newsletter quarterly, just because in terms of bandwidth and time investment, it doesn't make sense to send it more often than that. So yeah, it's a good question, Laura, and it's one of those that a month is a good sort of general feel, but you know, use your good judgment for your particular audience and make sure you get that balance of delivering value, staying top of mind, but not annoying people.
And I want to ask them, do people actually read newsletters in 2023? Do people actually go through them and get the content out of them?
Well, that's a great question. I can tell you that the average open rate on BioStrata's newsletter is 25 to 30%, and the click-through rate based on opens is about 12 to 15. Now, industry averages as much as 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 years ago, 20% open rate or less. Click-throughs based on open 10% or less was considered, you know, good. So we're beating those metrics today. So I still think email is a cracking way to reach people, but you have to build trust with them, and they need to believe you're going to send them stuff that's for the benefit of them, not for the benefit of you.
Yeah.
If your newsletter is, here's 10 products I'd love you to buy from me this month, expect low open rates and low click-through rates over time. Mostly because most people are not in a buying mode. What is it? The old adage, based on not much data as far as I can tell, is that 1 to 3% of the market are in buying mode at any given time. Well, if you're setting very product or sales driven messaging out to your whole database without knowing where they are in their buying cycle, you're going to get low engagement. The people who are ready to buy, that's great to get their engagement, but overall it's going to be quite low.
How much do you rely on like the HubSpot metrics? I know you guys are HubSpot focused, but the same thing applies for like Salesforce. Once you send this out, obviously you can track then the people's activity on your website thereafter. I mean, how much do you leverage that data, or how much should people leverage that? How important is it?
So we report and do a retrospective on every newsletter that we send out. We're looking to see which stories were the most effective. We A/B test our subject lines to try and figure out what's going to be the most likely to get people's interest. So I guess the short answer is lots. I think where some of the challenges with those metrics are these days is that certain email providers, Apple being the obvious example, do things like automatically open emails now. So they might register as having opened when they weren't opened. And obviously, many of these tools are based on image pixel tracking. So if people are blocking images as default in their provider of choice, Outlook was the classic for this, they wouldn't register as an open. That's why we really tend to look at the click-through rate and the people who are clicking and visiting the website, and we can see that they went to a certain web page, because it just gives us a bit more confidence in those metrics. I don't tend to worry too much about open rates and click-through rates. I'm looking at ballparks and trends. So if our open rate suddenly went from 25% to 5%, something's happening, right? If our click-through rate for a given email 1 month was really poor compared to the rest, and then it went right back up, it's like, okay, well, what can we learn from that one that didn't work very well?
Yeah. Okay.
Good questions. Oh, I like these. Right. Number 4, let's talk a little bit about ABM. Right, we've had a 4-box model, and now we've got a power law distribution. We're having a lot of fun today, Laura. So power law, sometimes referred to as the 80-20 rule. When applied to marketing, you can do this in multiple ways, but one is that a small handful of your prospects and customers are going to deliver a disproportionately large amount of revenue for your business. So if you focus your efforts on the top 20% of your target accounts, they'll likely deliver around 80% of your revenue. So in a time where marketing budgets are limited and we need to get our most bang for buck, ABM and really identifying and targeting those high value accounts can be a really effective tactic to employ. In terms of actually carrying out account-based marketing and sales, honestly, that would be a webinar of its own. Very briefly, marketing and sales have to work very, very, very closely on this to select those high-value target accounts. You then work together to generate insights about those accounts so that you can leverage those to create content and messages that you feel really confident is going to resonate with those target accounts. You share that content and those messages through the channels that are most likely to get the attention of the people in those accounts. And then once you've got that program running, trying to measure the effectiveness of that program so you can lean more into the messages and tactics and channels that are getting the best results over time, and also looking to land and expand and grow your presence within those larger accounts, especially when you're targeting bigger companies, to move from selling into one division of a big pharma company and now trying to get into another one, or from one disease area into another disease area. For those that are interested, I've always found the Engagio ebooks and content on this really, really useful. So they've got a number. So if you just Google Engagio, ABM playbook and stuff like that, you'll find this very easily. And there is also a book on this by one of the sort of key drivers of the ABM systemization movement over the last sort of 5 to 10 years, Sangram Vajre, who was the co-founder of Terminus, and that's a really good book. Sometimes the account-based marketing for dummies books, you're never quite sure if it's going to be really too simple or not, but this one is really, really good and well worth reading as well. And as before, alternatively, you can always hire an expert because sometimes it's faster and cheaper. Right.
And a quick question on that one. So say, Pfizer or a university is going to be your account. Do you take, 5 and then try to spread your efforts across so that you don't spam the life out of one of them when they turn to their colleague and say, well, those guys again? Or do you pick one and really focus on it? What's the best advice?
That's a great question. Like all great questions, I think it depends is the answer there. So there's a number of different sort of tierings that you can apply to your key accounts, and a lot of ABM practitioners will have like a tier 1 set of accounts where they're going to do true one-to-one marketing, and there might be 5 companies or 5 organizations in that list. Then they'll have a one-to-few, which is their tier 2, where the messaging will resonate with a small group of organizations, but they don't need to customize their approach or their messaging for those. And then they'll drift towards more of a one-to-many as perhaps their tier 3, which is pretty much everybody else, and maybe they're more the marketing that they're doing already. There are clever ways to scale this. So you could, for example, identify 5 key accounts. Let's say it's researchers working on cell and gene therapies. You may identify that regardless of the organization, there's a couple of pain points that are critical in all those organizations. And you create an ebook on that topic where 80% of the ebook is the same, but the intro and outro are customized to that specific organization that you're targeting. So it feels uber targeted to them. And any like little insights that your key account managers or your sales team can provide about their dealings with that account, so that you can really show an inner understanding of how that account works, drip those in the intro and outro, and maybe, you know, through the main body copy if necessary. But using that approach, you can actually scale even the one-to-one content creation needs at least quite well.
Interesting. Okay.
Right, number 5, find ways to automate simple, repetitive tasks. So there's a number of different ways that you can do this, from fairly mundane things like internal notifications and emails and things that you would normally have to do and draft manually. Anything that you do like more than a handful of times a week, look at ways to automate it, especially if it's quite templatable. For many companies, especially SaaS companies, they'll have a very specific customer onboarding process. So again, how can you automate as much of that as possible? And even though I think for many of us it's fairly old hat at the moment, how can you automate scheduling and publishing of content? So as an example, I'm not a huge fan of it for different reasons, but HubSpot enables you to automatically trigger a series of automated social posts whenever you publish a blog post, and it can also send an automatic newsletter with a summary of that new blog post with HubSpot's new AI-driven tool. So they have something called Content Assistant, which is in beta, which at the moment helps you with blog post drafting.
Yeah, like this is like AI bingo to see how many you can randomly slip in. Like there's another one.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's business buzzword bingo with the 4 box plots, and it's AI bingo as well. Hopefully everyone's stamping their cards and wondering when he'll stop. But no, it's so there's, I think what's really cool about that is some of these things that are very like templatey and automated through templates and feel very robotic will get better. So the ability to auto-create a custom written newsletter against a HTML template where the system understands what the blog post was about and writes a catchy headline to put in the newsletter to get people to click, I think we'll see that emerge over the next 6 to 12 months. Certainly we're not there yet, but there are a number of things that you can automate. There are too many things to talk about that you can automate in this webinar. In fact, that's a webinar of its own as well. How do I know that? Because we did one. And for those of you that are interested in other different ways that you might use marketing automation to get better results, be more efficient, more effective, etc., scan the QR code and it will take you to that webinar. You'll also find it in the resources section on the BioStrata website. Number 6 is how can you make your existing campaigns work harder with retargeting? So very briefly, I'm sure a lot of people on the webinar will know what retargeting is, but in essence, somebody visits your site using third-party cookies and first-party cookies, you make note of that fact, and then you can effectively follow them around the web, showing them your ads based on their IP address in order to keep showing relevant people your ads. I would think retargeting is going to be relevant for most life science companies, not all of them. A lot of it comes down to the cost benefit analysis of doing the approach, especially if you've got very niche small audiences, for example. But why it's powerful is it laser focuses your ad impressions and spend on people that have already heard of you and visited your website. So certainly if you're running any type of digital lead gen, Google Ads, trade media paid advertising, I would look to set up retargeting to really make sure you get the best bang for your buck from your existing other paid lead gen activities. So if it's not set up, maybe speak to your digital team or your supplier to get it implemented. One thing to note, and I get asked this a lot now, especially as we drift closer to the end of 2023, is that most current retargeting strategies are based on third-party cookies, which are currently being phased out, including most web browsers are going to be phasing them out, including Google Chrome by the end of the year. So one question would be, does this mean retargeting is going away? And in short, I would say the answer is no, but it will be less effective than it used to be. And so whether it's a viable approach by the end of 2023 or not is very much open to questions, probably going to depend on your specific use case. And a lot of this comes down to, because the way this is probably going to work is that groups of people are going to be like smooshed together based on their common interests. And so your ability to target and follow around a single individual is going to be gone. Instead, you're going to be looking to target sort of broader lookalike type audiences, which I think still is going to be valuable, but just not quite as much. The other thing is to do this with GDPR in mind. So you absolutely need to be confident that you're on top of all your cookie opt-in policies and that your privacy policy is up to date and explains how you use cookies and that you use retargeting and all this other stuff. Otherwise, you could get yourself in some hot water. Number 7, we talked about it a little bit at the beginning, but focusing on customer retention. So some interesting data here from Finances Online, which references some reports from the likes of Deloitte around just how much more expensive it is to acquire a new customer versus keeping a current one. I think we all think about this a lot and we talk about this a lot, but this tries to put some numbers to that. The fact that it could be 5 times more is maybe would cause us all a slightly sharp intake of breath. So I think a key question is for us as marketers, how can we focus on customer retention? Here are a handful of ideas that will hopefully help. Focusing on things like loyalty and reward programs. So how can you better reward current customers, offering exclusive content and resources for current customers, especially your best ones, right? Even extending to things like personalized training and other things that you can do to help make your current customers be more successful. Looking to regularly solicit and act on customer feedback, especially if it's good feedback, because then you can say, oh, do you want to leave us a review on any one of these review sites that are going to then help you with your marketing. Leaning into things like events and user group meetings where you can get happy customers together, talking and sharing insights and ideas with each other and talking about how happy they are with your product or service. And then finding ways to showcase and celebrate the work of your customers, which I guess with our marketing hats on would be a case study, but I think there's ways to tell that story to customers that makes it about them and their great work and wanting to make sure that they're getting the credit that they deserve. This is especially effective for academics who have to keep their profile high in order to be able to continue to attract grant funding and all that groovy stuff. Some other things that you can do, this leans back a bit to some of the automation stuff from before, is think about the little things you can do to delight your customers. And if you can find clever ways to do them at scale, that's even better. So what am I talking about? I'm thinking personalized gifts. That's gifts with a T, or I guess you could do GIFs, animated GIFs, handwritten notes, and show them that you remember key dates like the first day they became a customer, their birthday, any significant life events you know they've had. Get your sales teams, your customer service teams to be tracking this stuff in your CRM. Can you do little things like random acts of kindness? If you hear from a customer that they're struggling in some way, what can you send them that might brighten their day? And where possible, leverage automation to do this at scale. So this is just one example, a service called Handwritten that will allow you to trigger handwritten notes based off specific CRM data, like a person's birthday or a date they became a customer or some other bit of information you might put in your CRM. So there are ways to do this very cost effectively across even hundreds or thousands of customers. Can you afford to do this? Well, if it costs 5 times more to generate a new customer than to keep the one you have, then I would say yes, you can. Number 8, we're nearly done now, everyone. You're hanging in and I really appreciate it. Number 8 is to partner with other complementary life science businesses. So the key question here would be, how can you reach a bigger audience without paying for it, whilst also reducing the cost of content production? And the answer is to partner with a similar organization and co-market with them. HubSpot are the absolute masters at this. They partner with everyone on content. So they did this webinar that you can see on the screen here with Canva. They co-produced this ebook on generative AI, Stamp Your AI Bingo Card, with Jasper, in order to expand their reach and expand their brand exposure to, in this case, Canva and Jasper's audiences. But of course, Jasper and Canva get that benefit as well. So who in your market targets the same audience that you do, but offers non-competing products and services? And I really mean to think broadly here, right? Recruitment firms, accountancy firms, regulatory firms, product design firms, and maybe even some of your commercial suppliers. It makes sense to partner with you on a co-marketing agreement that's going to increase customer interest and is effectively going to be a rising tide that lifts all boats. So yes, who could you partner with on a co-marketing campaign to increase your reach and halve your campaign production costs? Number 9, get more mileage out of your best performing content. This is a good one. Many life science companies today have huge amounts of valuable content, and they honestly just haven't maximized the use of it. So are you getting enough from yours? Could you rebalance the amount of new content you're creating versus how much you're repurposing, updating, and reusing your existing content? And how could you remix and repurpose what you have to create new pieces of content? And the absolute classic that we apply here at BioStrata is a high value piece of content. Maybe it's a trend report or an ebook, sliced and diced up into blog posts, social media posts, to drive an email newsletter. And all of a sudden you've got all these extra pieces of content that basically all came from that one content source. So much faster and easier to produce those pieces of content when you have that keystone piece of content to work from. And while we're talking about content, let's talk about crap. Let's talk about differentiating your content and the concept of crap. So it's unbelievably now been a decade since Doug Kessler warned us that the ongoing explosion of content would lead to a sea of copycat, Me Too mediocrity, or what he called crap content. I think his prediction was absolutely right. I do think there was a lot of crap content that was produced. And with the rise of generative AI tools, stamp the bingo card, I do expect this problem to be magnified. But I do think that opens up a genuine opportunity for you to differentiate your brand, your voice, and your content by leaning into content that is uniquely human. And what I mean by that is things like podcasts, videos, and events, because this is where you can actually bring your human ideas, the value of conversation to your marketing efforts. And how much do I believe in this? So much so that we recently launched a podcast, somewhat ironically in this case, about AI, but that's not the point here. It was a podcast designed to help keep marketers abreast of the latest thinking and tools and applications and trends and stuff for AI and marketing. We're also producing more video to bring a human level of approach to the content that we're producing. And we're also going to looking to host and go to more in-person events, like the very, very interesting upcoming SAMPS conference in Glasgow, UK in June. Get your tickets now, folks, before they are gone. So a key question for you is, how could you lean into humanized content to ensure that the messages that you're taking to market stand out and that you're seen as a trusted thought leader in your industry, especially in a world where if people lean too heavily into generative AI tools, I promise you they're going to say the same things in slightly different ways, because all these tools do is regurgitate the information they were trained on. If you are producing humanized content about the latest trends that only you know because you're learning about them today. You've got a podcast or video interviews where your thought leaders are talking about things that are right on the cutting edge. It will help differentiate you. And this stuff doesn't need to be expensive. Give an example for artificially intelligent marketing, the podcast. Our process is very simple. We record the podcast on Zoom just using $15 headset like I've got on now. We put the audio into this amazing tool that's currently free from Adobe that will make it sound like you were recorded in a professional studio. And if you get a chance, Google Adobe Podcast Beta and go and have a play. There's a little sample on there. You can hear what the algorithm can do to make sound like it was like you've got studio time and spent thousands on your mic. We then use Audacity, which is a free Windows tool for editing the audio and is very easy to use. And then we pump that audio into Pop Squeeze, which automatically transcribes it and summarizes it and creates a summary blog post, social media post, all automatically. Now, I don't actually love the output, at least of the blog post from PodSqueeze. I think there's some work they need to do there to really improve that tool, but this is where things are heading. So what we actually do is take the full transcript and feed it into ChatGPT 4 and ask it to summarize each section of the transcript, and then we edit it and write it to make sure it's really, really good, and then we publish it on our blog. So this is an example of how you can quickly and easily and quite cost effectively start human first and still get all the written content that you might have wanted to keep your written content marketing going. And to stick with the theme, alternatively, hire an expert because it's faster and cheaper. So key takeaways. Identify your specific low-risk channels that work for you. Lean into those. Fine-tune your messaging for maximum impact. Make sure you understand your customers and you're communicating about things they care about. Leverage your existing key assets effectively, and by this we mostly mean your website and your contact database. Consider the value of your high-value prospects, the 80-20 rule, and how account-based marketing might allow you to get outsized results for the effort that you put in. Find ways to automate simple, repetitive tasks. Make your existing campaigns work harder through retargeting. Focus on customer retention. It's much harder and more expensive to get a new customer than it is to keep an existing one. Partner on co-marketing programs with other life science businesses. Get more mileage out of your best performing content by remixing and reusing it, and differentiate your content to make sure that the content that you do create is actually going to land with your audience and they're going to pay attention to it. So hopefully, Laura and everyone on here today, that's been valuable and interesting. If this is the type of information you wish you had more of, please do sign up to our newsletter. We consistently share that once a month. Hopefully it gives you interesting stuff to help fuel your marketing and sales efforts.
That was brilliant. And in fact, some of the questions that came through, you then answered after, so I didn't need to interrupt you too much, which was awesome. There's a few that I'd like to go back to. One is around that sort of retargeting and, you know, how effective that is. Obviously, you've said it's going to be less by the end of the year, but should we even bother now? You know, have you any ideas of metrics? And I think when we discussed this at the SAMPS event in Gothenburg, the scientists generally were a bit more suspicious, or a bit more, they weren't really into the retargeting as much as maybe the normal audience might be, and whether you sort of see that impact.
Yeah, I think it's a great question. I don't have any metrics to hand, to be honest, to answer that question. I think it's another one of those tactics where marketers did what marketers do. It's like, oh, this is a shiny tool that has a high impact, and then we overused it and we broke it and we lost consumer trust. I think if your ad is subtle and value driven, then I think it can work. I don't think it's going to make people buy. Like, this is not like buying a pair of trainers and then they didn't, you know, it's not a cart abandonment. Oh, I didn't buy my antibody, but luckily I saw 15 ads on Facebook, so then I bought it, right? It's more, how do I stay top of mind? How do I keep providing value to people that I don't know? And so sharing top of the funnel content like webinars, ebooks, and other things that are going to actually help them, I think you can still get good interaction with. I think if you follow them around with your mass spec instrument, I don't think that's likely to work.
And particularly now that things are changing anyway, if you aren't doing it already, it probably isn't a good time to sort of start putting that mechanism in place for a short-term solution.
Yeah, I think it depends what it takes for you to trial it. If you have a digital marketing team in-house and you just haven't really leaned into it too much, then I would give it a go. we're drifting into aspects like Google Analytics 4 now, where I have to admit I'm not much of an expert, but switching over from the old Google Analytics to Google Analytics 4, which is going to have all of this non-third-party cookie retargeting baked into it, would be a step ahead in terms of getting ready for at least using Google Display Network for topic-based and cohort-based retargeting. So it might be as simple as getting Google Analytics 4 installed on your website with a big fat asterisk, because this is not something I'm a deep expert in. I just have a working knowledge of.
Perfect. So we will be taking your advice and taking this content, repurposing it and sending it out through the internet as well. But for everyone that's here, thanks guys. A few wee questions still coming through. Yes, and one question here is a little bit on, should you be, you know, what's the balance between corporate brand awareness and marketing? You know, like where do you fit that? Where do you do the balance? Because I know when I'm watching this, I'm also thinking about recruitment. So we do a lot of marketing to like recruit new people as well, and it's hard to know where to sort of divide that.
Yeah, what a great question. So I'm going to, it's an apocryphal quote where I always forget the initial source if I'm honest, but there's the famous quote, 50% of my marketing works really well, I just don't know which half. And I think one of the dangerous things about the digital age is that we've been led down this false security blanket that we can track every interaction with a prospect to know for sure what activities are driving leads and customers. And I think for certain tactics and channels, we have high confidence, but for others, we have low confidence. And humans are messy. Like, why did they buy something? Even when you ask them and they tell you, you can't trust what they say, because often they apply a logical framework to explain an emotional decision in many cases. So what we saw at the start of the pandemic, especially without being able to go to trade shows, was digital lead gen. And part of showing that graphic earlier was because there was a move away from thought leadership, brand awareness, brand equity. And I think we're seeing that bounce back now. And that I hear terms like demand generation, right? So it's another word for sort of brand equity, brand awareness, and brand trust. It's just how do we rebrand it and make it sound sexier than how it used to sound, because it needs to sound sexy against lead generation.
And new.
So
yeah,
and new. So what I would say is, I think you need a balance. Like, I'm not saying throw out your lead gen programs. I think we need to do lead gen, but am I surprised that people are leaning more into corporate brand awareness initiatives? No. Do I think they add value? Yes. And I think if you can get in and do great work here early, while other people are still desperately trying to generate as many leads as they can, I think you'll get share of mind that the others will struggle to catch up on. So I do think that that's an opportunity. And as marketers, we're always looking for that arbitrage, right? When everyone else is zigging, where can I zag? And I think we're probably over the tip over point now where people have realized they need to do more on the brand awareness front, but it's tempting to say that it's too late. But then I think about this a lot. So maybe I'm predicting that more of us are doing more in this area than we really are. But yeah, to answer that question, I would be leaning into brand awareness, but having a balanced mix. And it was always about a balanced mix. And the problem was in COVID, we went lead gen, 52,000 webinars a day. I appreciate we're all on a webinar now. So, so yeah, balance is key.
And Sand wants to know, after COVID, are we no longer doing in person? Is a salesperson in person over, and now we have to do pandemic marketing because we can't really get in touch with people?
Well, that's a great question. So I was at LRIG in October. I think it's one of the best LRIGs I've ever been to. So I think that both in terms of how much value I got from the event, how much I heard the attendees got, how much the exhibitors got, and just how busy it was. I was at SLAS at the end of February, same thing. So, okay, that's 2 data points. Maybe that doesn't make a statistically relevant trend, but certainly everyone I've spoken to around those events was like, couldn't wait to be back in person and got lots of value from it. So I think events, as I mentioned on one of those slides, is this opportunity to humanize things in a sea of crap AI generated content potentially. I also think for salespeople, how can you best serve the needs of your customer? And if there are certain cohorts of your prospects and customers that really just don't want on-site visits, if you try and force that, you're just going to piss people off, right? So how can you best meet the needs of your customer? This is my personal view, not a BioStrata view, but I do think everybody work from home all the time is not great for society in general, personally, because I think it's going to lead to loneliness and other issues, and that over time we may see that people start to actually crave some human-to-human contact, in which case the effective salesperson will be able to see when their particular prospects would really love to get a visit and get that visit booked in. And for salespeople that have got used to not having to do visits, I wouldn't expect them not to come back in some form, because I think the best salespeople are going to figure out when it's appropriate, build a personal relationship, and win more deals because of it.
Very interesting. Perfect. So what I'll do is we'll leave it there, give everyone their 10 minutes back, and any questions for Paul, your details will be somewhere in the slides.
They are there.
Perfect. Awesome. So Paul's details are there. If you want to get in touch with him directly, get him through LinkedIn, and this will go up, as I say, so all of the details will be there. So thanks, Paul, very much. Very interesting, and I'm sure that we'll put some of those mechanisms in place as well for SAMPS and our other roles. Speak to you soon and see you in Glasgow.
Yeah, looking forward to it. I'll see everybody on the webinar there. Thanks, everyone. Cheers. Bye-bye.